The third page, yeah. But for the 1 through 3, just phrase kind of like a list. Just jot down a list of them. For number 4, I want a little bit more complete, so full sentences, kind of like a short ID. And then 8 and 9. The last two on the second to last page, 8 and 9. And same deal, 8, just kind of a list. 9, a little bit more complete. On a separate sheet, there's obviously not enough room on this. Has everyone got that? Don't try to cram it in. If you cram it in, I'll make you redo it because I can't read it. And they'll be due on Tuesday. It's a really interesting reading, but his whole point is, or what the importance of this on the road is about regulation. Should government step in and do something about cutthroat competition? And it's a really good example of what cutthroat competition was doing by giving the example of food. Because we all tend to eat food. And we can imagine eating this food. And when you buy something that's processed, like this, or pretzels, or whatever that vague petroleum-based thing you're eating, or what do we have there?
Eat it.
Ooh, we have no idea what goes in, right? So we're just hoping for the best. We all do it, but we're hoping for the best. Like when it says chicken, it's actually chicken and not stuff. You'll find out what the stuff is.
Let's listen to you.
So let's go ahead and take your notes out. Where do we fit? Did we get to Alaska?
We got to, yeah, 1898 gold rush. People look.
Oh, we got the gold rush. Awesome. Who did the United States buy Alaska from? Russia. So the British can't get it. And the thing is, the gold rush would make it more, well, it would lead to a lot of colonization. Citizens of the United States would move up to Alaska. Not many moved up there before. There was a couple little whaling stations, that it. Another amazing story. Did I mention how this would help get out of the panic? More gold in circulation, along with a big gold discovery in South Africa. It's gonna be a little bit later, probably. Tuesday, I'm probably looking at Thursday. Everything's taking longer than I thought. Everything takes longer than I think. I know, it's my fault. I'm blaming society. By the way, are you all as tired of the very cold? Or some of you like really enjoying it? Are you enjoying it? The temperature is a balmy.
It's like 20 degrees warmer.
It was supposed to get up to 18, but I don't know if it's going to be. All right, so back to this. Who was elected president in 1896? 1896.
McKinley.
McKinley. What party was McKinley?
Uh,
Republican. Who was the free silver candidate?
Brian.
And what party nominated Bryan besides the Democrats? And they kind of threw in their lot with them. Who gave McKinley $700,000?
No.
Yeah, Rockefeller. And so money became more important than ever and began to liberal economics. Let's move on. So we got to get going. So Washington's farewell address. We've mentioned this once before where he tried to avoid political parties. And this is the part he was warning about imperial wars. When he's talking about alliances, remember the United States was born out of imperial wars. The French and Indian War. If I King's right, King George's War, Queen Anne's War, King William's War, the War of Jenkins' Ear. Yeah. And so he's saying avoid these alliances, avoid wars for empire. It would get the United States entangled all over the world in alliances that we might not want to be in later on, and the wars where we might actually lose. And he warned about this. Now, he loved the army. He wanted a big army. The United States never really had for a lot of years. But it also ignores one basic thing. For 100 years, the United States technically avoided these imperial wars, except for, of course, the Mexican-American War, kind of a biggie. But look at the United States. Here's the original 13 colonies. The U.S. got this in 1783. But there were people who lived there. So the United States conquered this area. That's imperialism. They conquered the Louisiana Purchase. They conquered this. They conquered this for the people who lived there. That's imperialism. The United States was already doing this. But then we absorbed it to the U.S. It wasn't like, it was a colony for a while, a territory, and then we made them like Montana, states. Alaska's different, and that's why we gotta mention that. That one was purchased, annexed, and would be a territory for almost 100 years. And so it showed how things were different after the United States went sea to sea. So let's get to the reasons for waited all year for this. This is a great cartoon. This is showing, first off, this is supposed to be the new year, so the future, this strange half-clothed toddler with a top hat. But it's showing Columbia and Uncle Sam. World War I, specifically this poster right here, the I Want You, kind of would bring Uncle Sam up to the forefront. But it's showing the new empire, the new United States after the Spanish-American War and after 1898. So here are the people from the US would ask farmer, business, oh, I'm sorry, laborer, businessman, farmer. But then look what else. Here, Cuba, Puerto Rico, Philippines, Hawaii. All now happy parts of this new American empire, all joyously dancing. And the future, a little kid, looks bright. So what are the reasons? The first one, maybe, we'll eventually get there. There we go. Closing the frontier. The United States became continental nation in 1845, and then 45, and conquered here, then swung around here, and then conquered here. The West had been taken. In fact, by 1911, you're going to have the 48 states. These would eventually join as states. So the United States now is sea to sea. The US would look west. Remember, Thomas Jefferson looked west. They all look west. Well, there was that desire for wealth, to gain more, to get more land, whatever it might be. Stop at the Pacific. So this is going to fuel more growth. And number two, the Panic of 1892-3. The real thought was we need something to unify this country together. Remember Coxey's Army, the Pullman strike. It seemed that the country was being torn apart. And just 30 years earlier was the Civil War. And the idea is something to pull it together. That's the Pullman strike right there. Something to pull us together. But it's more than that. Remember mercantilism. An empire, it was argued, might solve the problem of oversupply. The Panic of 1893 showed that we had a surplus. If we had a place to sell it, aka an empire, a captive market, maybe the panic wouldn't have been so bad if we could scoop up colonies. And so here's the idea of the US industries protected now with an empire behind tariffs. And even with the tariffs, international trade went up in this decade. So the thought was the United States would trade out this empire or trade out the surplus and get raw materials. And this was obviously what Britain did. This is an example of mercantilism. Next, Alfred Thayer Mahan would write one of the most influential books in world history, The Influence of Sea Power on World History from 1660 to 1783. So he was a commodore or commander in the United States Navy. He was an instructor at Annapolis, the Naval Academy. And he wrote a book about, he's trying to push, that's his job, teaching would-be officers in the US Navy. But he's trying to say what makes powers great. Why did one country be relatively weak, a mediocre power in the 17th century, become a great power? Why? Well, he wrote it down, what makes countries great? What makes them great? It's trade. Trade makes them great. So it's economic concept of comparative advantage. There are certain things that a country can do, like the United States can do better than others. They should produce that. And things that they can't do as well, they have to trade with somebody else. And therefore, we can trade our surplus of our goods. We can trade them, and that's how That's how countries are made, or I'm sorry, great powers are made. But here's the issue. If we don't have, as a nation, the materials to produce our goods, we need an empire to provide the raw materials, to provide the market, to provide a market of last resort if there's a trade war. We need an empire. We need an empire. This is what he's talking about. This is what's proven by his history of 1660 to 1783. This is what we need. So, in an empire, there's a problem. If you have an empire, what if a stronger power cuts off your trade routes? And remember, he was a commander in the US Navy. So what is he saying? We need a stronger Navy. And that's what makes powers great. Trading empire, Navy to protect it. You need Navy. And then it becomes complex. Then what do? By the way, what country is he talking about from 1660 to 1783? Went from being a relatively weak power to the greatest power on earth. Britain. He's talking about Britain. And what does Britain have? Empire, bases. And so here's the point. You must have bases for your Navy. You must have to protect your trade, or you're at the mercy of somebody else. And his example, Britain. Britain is the example. And so what he's basically saying is that by 1783, Britain can cut off anybody's trade, including the United States. In 1790s, Britain had a Navy that was twice as big as the rest of the world's navies combined. They put every penny in the Navy. They had a tiny little army that was hardly more than to guard their colonies. But it's an island. So who's going to invade? They had the Navy. And so when the United States started ironclads, those armored vessels in the Civil War, remember the Merrimack and the Monitor? Well, Britain took that and they started making ironclads and then steel armored ships, modern coal engines. And the thing about it is, coal, a lot more efficient than sailing. The problem with coal is it's heavy. So you need coaling stations. Heck, you can see it right here. The United States will start taking these atolls, nothing more than sand atolls in the Pacific for coaling stations. Here, Midway Island. To fuel the Navy, you've got to have coaling stations. Oil might be even better. Gee, I wonder if this will help trigger a worldwide rush for oil. I'm sure it would have no big impact on the Middle East today. Moving on, yes, it's obviously it's coming up. So that's what right? Empire, Navy, and you need bases. And Britain. He also said one thing then. If it's all going to be based upon navies, if there's a war, whoever has the strongest navy at that moment will win. You can't start a war and then go and start building a navy. It's too expensive and only the most industrialized, technologically advanced countries to do it. So you better build a navy now. And so then it will lead to one big naval battle of these new ships called battleships that will fight it out. And the winner of that battle will control the seas. You can't sit back and wait. You just can't go build it after the war starts. Because he looked back at the United States. The United States will build an incredible navy at the beginning of the Civil War. Or I'm sorry, for the first 2 years of the Civil War. But what he says is you won't have time. Because if we go to war with Britain and we take 2 years to build a navy, they've already won. You need a navy now. And so what he's talking about an arms race for the one big battle. And everybody's going to start preparing for this one big battle because everybody who had a navy read this. Remember I've mentioned one big battle before? Is it ever one big battle? Almost never. So this is another false idea. But they all started doing it. Britain, of course, is like, this confirmed everything we were doing. Yes, this is why we're number one. The United States began to build, much smaller than Britain, but a modern steel armored fleet. What other countries were industrially advanced enough and rich enough to start building a navy. Most of the countries today are there. You think of a country? Russia was just beginning the Industrial Revolution, so they couldn't do it. France, its population was less than 2/3 out of Germany, their big rival, so they had to spend every penny they had on their army. Who's left? Austria is too weak. The Ottoman Empire is too weak. Spain is decrepit. The kingdom's about ready to fall. There are 2 countries that would read this. Now, this implies that you have to know something about the world. Who?
Norway, Sweden.
In fact, Norway wasn't a country yet. Who said it? Japan. Japan was beginning to industrialize. So, Japan. So I put down Britain, another one, Japan. And Japan is an island nation. So they haven't much, they're actually based their navy on the Royal Navy, the British Navy. And they begin looking about, we have to get resources in an empire. So Japan began to expand. Gee, the United States is looking west and expanding their empire. Japan is expanding. I wonder if something's going to happen there. I wonder if there'll be a war for empire between Japan and the United States coming up. No, there won't be. I can't even imagine a war happening. Japan attacked the United States. We'll get to the reasons why a little bit later. They attacked an American colony. It was all empire. Hawaii was a colony. The next place they attacked were British and American colonies here. And Dutch colonies. It's all empire. World War II. And what's the other country? It's a brand new nation created in 1871. It's an empire. It has a Kaiser. Germany. Germany had the most powerful land army in the world. And they thought, why do we need a navy? We have the strongest army in the world. France is right behind them. France has a fantastic army too. Their new leader, their emperor named Kaiser Wilhelm II, started building. Red man said, we need an empire. We need our place in the sun. So everyone got that? Britain, then you had Japan and Germany. Germany started to build a navy. What country? Waiting for me. We kind of like Germany. Germany might have paid us. Britain would become closer to their age-old enemy, the French. World War I is coming. Mahan had a lot of impact. He's a big deal. Big deal. So next, imperialistic fervor. And fervor is like this, like growing cry. We got it. Great powers have an empire. Aren't we great? Britain, the sun never set on the British Empire by 1880, meaning their colonies spread around the globe. Why can't America be great too? So it's very nationalistic, a source of pride. Look at the areas we control. Britain has half of Africa. We want to have this. So here's a satirical British magazine called Judge, implying that Uncle Sam and Britain are going to conquer half the world, implying that these will be the imperialistic powers to lead the world into a new generation. Here is one of the most famous imperialistic cartoons in British history. It's showing Cecil Rhodes, the imperialist, kind of a scoundrel. He would get a lot of the gold and diamond market in South Africa as the Colossus of Africa now, showing the control of the British Empire from Cape Town to Cairo. And then the United States would copy this, the cartoon here of Uncle Sam, the Colossus of the Pacific, from the United States to the Philippines. Our empire. We're just as great as the British, right? Or the French. All the Germans had a huge empire, or the massive Russian empire. So here's one showing then how great this would be. Look at Uncle Sam, just a little toddler in 1783 when the country was formed. But every time we got more land, look how much bigger. By 1898, gonna need new clothes. Look how big he is, but now we got a navy, and the rest of the world is looking to us. We're great. Look how great we are. That whole needing new clothes, will be a very common theme in this era. Number 5, social Darwinistic thinking. This was somebody you read about already. And he would write a number of different books, but the discovery of America would have great influence. I've never read the whole book. I've read parts of it. I found it very hard to read. But the goal of the United States must be to save civilization, because there are savage forces that if we don't save it. And he wrote that the only people who could save it was the Anglo-Saxon race. It is their duty. They should lead the fight towards civilization. Now, if I say Anglo-Saxon, what nation am I referring to? Let me say it again. Yeah, British. That's Britain. That's England. So Anglos and Saxons, here's a little bit of Roman history. You ready? This is a fun one. During the barbarian invasions of 200 or so CE, we had the Vandals, the Ostrogoths, the Angles, the Jutes, and the Saxons. When these Indo-European tribes had swept into this area of Germany. And when the Roman Empire fell, the Angles and Saxons hopped over the English Channel and went to England, Roman Britannia. Anglo-Saxons, they conquered it. So Anglo-Saxon. It's a little bit confusing because there's also part of Germany today, a province named Staaten, Saxony. So they should take the lead. And this justifies this discovery of America is this justification of the American civilization taking over the United States. The history of the US, and it's very social Darwinistic. And it's proving that destiny of the United States or manifest destiny. And he looks very much like a good friend of mine. Every time I see that picture, it makes me laugh. But here's a picture from one of the many books that were coming out, social Darwinistic, dividing people up in races. And look at all these are all different races. So people are dividing ourselves up by color of skin or where they're from. And this is purely a social construct by people. Remember, this whole thing about dividing people up by color of skin didn't come about to the 17th century. I'm not saying people did not notice different shades of skin. Of course they did, but they didn't divide each other up by this. In the middle, in a very prominent role, Anglo-Saxons. So another book he would write would be The Hierarchy of Race. And the hierarchy of race would really then lay out that hierarchy up and down race. Here's another one of these pictures, a frame from it. One of the different races of man. Remember, people are just dividing everybody up. And there's no genetic differences. We know now, people didn't really think about it then. But you have the Mongolian race, Ethiopian race, American race, Malay, Malaysia, and Caucasian. Which I do find it amusing that Caucasians, from basically they're trying to say the Northern Europeans and Anglo-Saxons. What's the name Caucasian? No?
Hmm?
Huh? It's not, it's here. That's Caucasian. That's the same kind of thing, stuff like that. Same kind of just took it in. Back to this. And these are intensely social Darwinistic. If you're dividing people by hierarchy of race, by definition, that's racist. And you notice how, look out, dark, in the shadows. The only one looking at you is in the middle. She's civilized. I've talked about that. Remember going back to justify slavery. She's looking at you. And you notice it's she. Men who won't look at you, dark in the shadows. Do they look friendly? No. And maybe they're meant to be sinister, uncivilized, savage, threatening. When this was made, they want you to think one thing. They want you to think one thing. She's an introvert. She's an introvert. She's in danger. Something's going to happen to her. One more thing. Harris Soap would really hit on this, soap company. And they would really hit the idea of the civilizing power of colonization. And they would advertise this. And it's horrific. But I want to show you this was seen as funny in 1899. They would do all these ads promoting colonization. I know Paris soap would disappear about 1916. We bought into something called a light boy, and long story. But the civilizing power. And so here is civilized, so they know how to bathe. Teaching, well, don't know how to bathe. Look at the eyes. I don't know, I've never seen this before. And here's soap. And what happens? The civilizing power of soap, they become more civilized. I mean, it's shockingly racist. And this was seen, what, I gotta be clear, this is funny. We're supposed to laugh, but it's also to justify colonization. And it's supposed to, well, it's very social Darwinistic. It's amazing how casual the racism was. So here's another one. So same argument, Rudyard Kipling, the great British poet, curious background, but he would write a poem justifying the American conquest of the Philippines as white man's burden. It would be put in the paper. This is a newspaper. I thought this was pretty funny. Front page of the newspaper, this poem, and the white man, you notice, they have her rescuing these savages. Just amazing. At the same time, they have palmistry. Talking about how you could read someone's personality by the palms of their hand, the new science. I just thought that was kind of funny. But the white man's burden. And I had to show you this cartoon because it's one of the most famous. This is either the Philippines or Cuba. The United States would conquer the Philippines, take Cuba from Spain. Okay, you read Teddy Roosevelt charging up San Juan Hill. So that's Teddy Roosevelt representing America. And he's going up the hill. And it's implying we're coming there to help. Because what's he carrying? That's either a Cuban or a Filipino. It's supposed to be either one. Look at the face. You remember those pictures I showed you to justify slavery or to justify Jim Crow, to make it almost seem subhuman? Yeah, that's a person with a grass skirt, uncivilized. And it's just all color of skin. And they can't make it themselves because they're too uncivilized. So they're carrying it up to what is a measure of civilization. You see it? One more thing. Why do we do this? It's implied here. They don't say it, but they're supposed to have you read this or look at the cartoon and go, aren't we good doing this? What's this? Boots. Implying American soldier died to do this. The United States was sacrificing to carry out white man's burden. We're not doing it for gain. We're not doing it for empire, spreading civilization and making the ultimate sacrifice for others. Now, is that true? Absolutely not. It's once I see boot, do you catch it now? It's a body. It's kind of hidden. That's supposed to be the face. Really interesting cartoon. All these things to justify. And remember that face. We'll come back to this in a second. Here's another one. Uncle Sam, Britain, carrying these other, and look at how they draw the faces. You look at the faces. Look how they draw. And dragging them up to civilization. This was common all the time. And just imagine if, well, not everyone's going to have lighter shades skin. What you're telling people who these represent, this is what we think of you. Pretty amazing. We're jumping right here. And if, or else, here's the consequences. If the United States does not carry out its duty to civilize, aka white man's duty, white man's burden, along with Britain, or else what will happen? This was a really popular book at the turn of the century. The Rising Tide of Color. If it's not stopped, there will be race mixing and the white race is done. Here's a book. It was kind of almost like a sequel. I've read this. It's shocking. I've not read The Passing of a Great Race. What's the passing of the great race? The Anglo-Saxon race. Do you remember social Darwinism? And I told you the term for selective breeding to make sure that there would not be race mixing. Do you remember that term? Good guess, but no. Begins with an E. Eugenics. That's what it's talking about. We don't do selective breeding, but we race mixing. Yeah, this is really popular. So we jump right to, I should add, this is a really popular book amongst the kind of ultra nationalistic to this day called the Turner Diaries. It's really spread amongst like these militia movement in the United States today. It's almost the same thing. Got to save the white race. It's really popular today. After required reading, who knows? Hawaii. So let's get to a classic example of American imperialism. So we got the 5 readings. Let's jump right into Hawaii. What happened in Hawaii was this. Before we get anything else, look what Hawaii is at. There's really not a mini island, hardly anything between what is now the United States across the Pacific. So Hawaii is a very important spot, especially at first for whaling ships. It was a monarchy. Hawaii at this time had a king. And in 1849, the United States would sign a treaty with Hawaii to make it a protectorate, basically convincing the Hawaiians it was a pretty unequal treaty. Britain's going to take you. So we will protect you. Just let us control your trade. Meaning we're kind of, it's still independent. But by 1875, a bunch of people who leave the United States or leave a country and go to another one, they're called expatriates or expats. A bunch of expats from the United States, they went to take advantage of, well, sugar. But then they found something that was so much more valuable than sugar, they couldn't believe it. See it? Pineapples became the rage by 1890. And if you had a fresh pineapple, yeah, makes sense. Pineapples, oh my God, these are so good. And they can last a really long time, so they can make it over the sea. I love pineapple. If you don't like pineapple, I don't know. I feel sorry for you. Fresh pineapple. Well, by 1890, most of the best land was owned by expats, U.S. planters. They went to another country, but they are expats. They went to another country, but they still kind of consider themselves part of the United States. And by then, most of the Hawaiians were almost like indentured servants or wage earners, or they had a little plot of land that they were going to lose by debt. The American planters were just scooping this land up, the best land. And there's a U.S. naval base on Maui. So the U.S. Navy was still small. You might have heard of Pearl Harbor. That's on Oahu. It was too shallow. So it would have to be dredged in the next century. So in the 1890s, though, into the 1880s, a new queen, Queen Liliuokalani. And she had a slogan, Hawaii for the Hawaiians. And her plan was land reform, to buy the land from the U.S. planters, force them to sell it, and give it to the peasants, Hawaiians. So take the land that had been scooped up and give it to the poor Hawaiian peasants. Now they would pay for it, but you can imagine the planters, American planters are furious about this. This is a direct threat to them, and she's going to become incredibly popular. So these are landholders, Hawaiian landholders, to represent what could be all Hawaiians. So it's kind of a publicity photo. So basically, she's trying to get out from American control. It's an independent country still. Well, the planters are going to turn around for a massive propaganda campaign. Around here. And they claimed, look at her, decadent, horrible rule. Just look at her. She's not. And she's corrupt, immoral. And that's what she's doing. So here is in a U.S. newspaper, this was in San Francisco, and this is a political cartoon, but they watercolored it down the road. Look how they draw the face. Look how they draw the queen. You remember that picture I showed you of Teddy Roosevelt? That's why I said, look at the face. Remember that? Same kind of horrific caricature. And I mean, just an exaggerated like feet, exaggerated hands, gross immorality, scandalous rule held up by U.S. Marines on the naval base. Completely untrue, but it fit in with that social Darwinistic thinking. And so they said, we can't allow this corrupt rule. And that's going to lead to a revolution in Hawaii. This will be a little like California and Texas. So this is not new. And this will become the template down the road. So, remember the McKinley Tariff? Well, the McKinley Tariff raised taxes. The planters also had American subsidiaries, and they had to pay the taxes. And so they didn't want these taxes to hit them in America. And so they wanted annexation. How do you annex them? They remembered what happened in Texas. Remember, Texas became independent? And remember, California became the Bear Flag Republic? We'll do it here. They started this PR campaign. She's immoral, and finally said, we have to overthrow the Queen. The Queen had a tiny little personal guard and a small little police force, hospitals. The planters had a strong militia, and without orders from President Cleveland, Marines from the Navy base joined in and forced the Queen to surrender. They should take it totally by surprise. They create the Republic of Hawaii. That Sanford Ballard Dole, gotta admit, pretty amazing beard. Gotta admit, have you read Dole before? Dole. The banana that I have for a snack every second period. That's a Dole banana. It's going to become a corporation. Now it's a big holding company. But he became the president. But what did he want? Just like California and Texas, he wanted to be annexed by the United States. He wanted to be annexed. But Cleveland said no. It goes against American values. The United States is not a despotism. It's not a tyranny. We're not like Imperial Russia. We're not like these big colonizers. We represent the Declaration of Independence, self-determination. Now, don't forget, the U.S. had just conquered the American West. That's a little bit disingenuous. So Hawaii will be in this weird limbo where the Queen will be under house arrest. There'll be a republic. The U.S. kind of indirectly supports them, a little like Republic of Texas. But that's how Hawaii will lose their queen. I should add, what's going to happen to the Hawaiians once it became this republic? They would lose everything. The actual Hawaiians, the expats would take hold of control. And then when McKinley became president in the kind of the afterglow of winning the Mexican or the Spanish-American War, United States annexed. There is Stanford Ballard Dole accepting or becoming the first territorial governor. So the United States annexed. Now, the United States trying to portray this out, we had to take Hawaii, or Britain would take it. We needed this because we just took the Philippines and we need Hawaii for a base. So that's what they presented it as. So the next picture I'm going to show you will be of Uncle Sam playing John Bull, Britain. That represents Britain. Again, chess. And just took Britain's queen, Hawaii, and look at the face of Hawaii. That same caricature. Same way they used to justify slavery, etc., to show that they are unable to govern themselves. Okay. And that's what we the rest of the world wanted. So that leads directly to the Spanish-American War. And here's another one of these. Uncle Sam needs a new suit. We're getting so big. And this has all the places the U.S. has taken, from Alaska, California, Hawaii, etc. There's McKinley as a tailor, knows the big shears. And it says, enlightened foreign policy, national expansion. Implying this is all done for the good of all. All done for the good of all? Go. So, in Cuba, there was a revolution. Cuba was a Spanish colony. Jose Marti, a young lawyer, one of the great heroes of Cuba today, was a leader of a group called Cuba Libre. Liberty for Cuba, freedom for Cuba, Cuba Libre. And there had been a guerrilla war against the Spanish rule of Cuba since about the late 1880s. It's actually the third big revolution. And don't forget, the United States has had its eye on Cuba for a long time. Remember, there was talk about annexing Cuba before the Civil War. It could be 2 slave states. The U.S. always kind of saw Cuba as potentially theirs. Spain was in the Kingdom of Spain was in free fall. It had lost most of its colonies. The monarchy was weak. They would soon collapse. And so they were just desperately holding on to their few colonies. Just their few colonies that remained, like Cuba, Puerto Rico. Guam. This place called the Philippines. But back to Cuba. That's Cuba, that's Jose Marti. These are Cuban guerrillas. It's really jungle, a lot of jungle there. And so there would be brutal hit and run attacks. Cuba Libre would come out and attack small units, attack the Spanish government, Spanish officials, Spanish colonists, and then hide back into the jungle. And of course, Cuban peasants would help. They would help. They would help Cuba Libre because they wanted independence. Spain, going into the 1890s, decided to adopt a very fierce, harsh policy called the reconcentration policy. The reconcentration policy would be to isolate the guerrillas. It would be administered by Valiero Weiler. He was his parents were German. They immigrated to Spain, so he had a German last name. He would soon be dubbed the butcher by the brutality of this program. Basically, what it was is this: they would round up all the peasants. Here's a real picture. Here's a drawing of them. Round them up at gunpoint. These are the ones helping Cuba Libre, and they would put them in this reconcentration camp. They would take them and put them in a camp, reconcentration camp. And they put them in this camp. And then what it meant is everybody outside the camp was Cuba Libre. And they could kill. And so they're telling everybody, if you don't go to the camp, we will expect you to be guerrilla and we will run you down. And if we don't kill you, we will execute you for treason. And they would do these public executions with anybody outside the camp, and they would be garroted. A garrote is slow strangulation. You ever seen it in a movie, like one of those spy movies or something? They have a rope, they come up behind. That's garroting. That's garroting. They have these garroting chairs. You can see the picture here. They would put a leather strap around you, and then have this sticking. So this one's pointed. It's pretty horrible into the back of your neck. And every turn of that crank, it pushes you into this. You could do this, just a little turn. You can make this last 3 days. Just let me sit like that, give it a little turn, sit there and egg it. Turn. Here is a reenactment of this. It's a reenactment. But they started torturing, very public executions. This one we don't know if it's a reenactment of it. And then what was life like in the camps? Well, they're going to punish the peasants for helping the guerrillas. So in the camp, they purposely held back food, and the Spanish officials were incompetent. You know, they didn't care. So they didn't care if food got there. And there was starvation. In the short term, it was very effective, though. Cuba Libre was hurt. They had to go to the hills. They had to run to the mountains. But look at some of these pictures that got out of these camps. Look on the right, self-explanatory. Look at the distended stomach from starvation. Hell on earth. And newspapers in the United States started to report this. One more thing. It did kind of work in the short run. The British would do the exact same thing in South Africa, what's called the Boer War. They would take and isolate the Boer commandos, the guerrilla. Then they changed the name a little bit. What did the British call these camps? British. That's where the term comes from. I wonder if another country would do the same thing. Oh yeah, in the Philippines. Guess what the United States would. Okay, all concentration camps are going to be where you concentrate people. Names will change. The first American training camps in World War I, where they had boot camp, basic training, they called them concentration camps, which seems so weird to me. But that's what they're doing concentration camps. If you're going to be gone tomorrow, I have to give you that worksheet for the Trans Shirtwaist Fire. Remember what we're doing tomorrow? Everyone cool on that? We're good? We're good? Don't forget this worksheet. Oh, almost forgot something. Another assignment. I'm not going to assign chapter 21 of the textbook because I think for time reasons. And so in the review book that you all have, read chapter 21 of the review book for Wednesday.
Sir, twist.
I'll narrow it down on Tuesday.
Okay.
Because it's a lot of stuff. I'll narrow it down to like 5 or 6.
Okay.
Have a good day, everybody.
What's the homework for? What's this thing?
Huh?
Chapter 21 of the review.
Of the review book. Oh. It's chapter 21. I mean, it's good, but we gotta get going. For which I'm blaming you.
I mean, our.
Goodbye, everybody. Are you getting used to third period? Not quite the same, though. All right, come on, people, we gotta go. I know you never want to leave. I'll see you Tuesday. I'm going to Missoula. Partially, we're gonna do something good, partially not. See you Tuesday. Grab one. How's your job? Better? Be able to sleep? I get it. Everybody grab one of these. Grab one of these. I get it. We can't split. I know. I mean, it's different things, but we can't split. I have a gift for you guys. I have gifts.
Oh, a packet.
I come very. I only care about helping make your day, enlighten your day. I have a gift. Where were you yesterday? Grab that.
Wait.
Just wait a second.
Oh.
Just wait a second. I'll explain what I have to do with this, then I'll let you go.
I'll leave it.
Grab, I have a gift.
Okay.
Specially made. Each of you. I know. That's the kind of person I am. Here's my prediction, 1 degree. I don't know if it's gonna make it to 8. I gotta wear with your kids gonna see. Okay, we might get, maybe not supposed, are we supposed to be like pretty good snow? Yeah, might be. Monday and saying. Oh, 2 to 3 inches of snow on Monday.
So this morning, I got in my car, I was like, so maybe it's much. Great. I thought that was the valley.
Isn't that amazing how it does that? Like, well, we can just say version, which is Stinson. Everyone grab that worksheet. You don't get them all wrong. Don't even try. I know what you're thinking. I'm taking small. I know what those are worth on the black market. Let me explain what's going on. All right, that's not good. I don't sleep because I'm gonna be gone tomorrow. I'm gonna give you half the day to work on that. All right, everybody. I'm leaving the film.